Hey everybody, welcome back to another diecast-ish video. Today we're actually touching on a incident that has sparked a ton of controversy, which I didn't think it was this huge of a deal. But on pit road, these two tangled for now. This is the 5th time they've tangled in a couple of years. So yeah, they tangled again, and it was just a simple little thing of coming out of pit road. There wasn't enough room for 4 cars to go wide, and odd man out was Chase Elliott. Had to hit the brakes and lose about 3 spots. So just obviously he was unhappy about it because he actually was ahead of Hendrick and was going to be ahead of Larson, but yeah, basically it ended up being that he ends up coming up behind that, and of course if he had come out in front of Hendrick, chances are he would have lined up where Hendrick lined up, and kind of looks like that worked out for Hendrick, didn't it? So anyway, let's get into the whole controversy, because this entire thing was just kind of weird that it's blowing up as bad as it is, because I mean, I saw it. I knew it happened. I didn't think much of it, to be completely honest. I saw what had happened and how it looked, and I thought, it's definitely something that I'm sure they would have had to have a conversation about. But outside of that, I didn't think it was that egregious. But this is part of that playoff thing, I guess, that I just don't understand. If one guy's in the playoff, one guy's out, the guy outside the playoffs is just supposed to roll over and hand every spot out, which I don't agree with. Obviously as a fan of a driver who's not in the playoff, but also just in general. I mean, if you think that drivers that don't have the yellow windshield banner should just simply not try to race and should roll over every time, well, then that explains the ratings drop in the final 10 races, because you've eliminated half the field. And that's statistically what has generally happened over the last 10 to 15 years, is that those who didn't have the banner over the windshield of their car would just be irrelevant, and not by choice, but by, they would have a good car, but the minute somebody got near them, they had to just back out and let them go by. And that I do believe is a huge problem, because when you're a fan going to the racetrack, if you're cheering for, like Kyle Larson last year after he had been eliminated, at Homestead, you're like wanting him to go out and do well. Now, luckily, he was racing another non-playoff guy for the win, but you imagine if Kyle Larson ran into the back of Denny Hamlin on pit road and spun him and took away his chance at the Final Four, it wouldn't have happened. Like, he would have had to just simply stop and roll over. But because it was Martin Truex, he didn't have to do that. So, yeah, I don't agree with that notion. I know a lot of people, I think, have that notion. I'm not sure why, because like I said, I don't think that's a good notion to have. I think it's bad for the sport. But yeah, if that's your thought, is that, hey, the playoff guys have earned the right to, basically have the right of way, then that's fine if you want to believe it that way, but I don't think that's accurate. I think these drivers still have a lot to compete for, and I mean, he is still in the owner's title, but I know that's not the same thing. So there's that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, of course, this is not the first time these two have tangled. This is, like I said, you can go a number of times they've already tangled in the past, and at the end of the day, the remaining issue still remains the same. And that issue is that the 5 runs into the 9. The 9 is not typically running into the 5 and making the 5 mad. It's the 5 running into the 9 and making the 9 mad, typically. And I know a lot of people want to say it's not a big deal, but if it's the same guy over and over again, that generally eventually becomes a big deal, because that person is not showing any signs of, respecting the way you race them. So what does that mean? To be completely honest, I don't foresee these two staying teammates very long. Not past their current contracts. I think one of them will leave, and I think it'll be Chase, to be completely honest. I think Kyle, obviously, with the Hendrick Cars.com and the championship and the running Ricky's car, or Ricky Hendrick's car, paint scheme, obviously the wins, the continuity with him and Cliff Daniels is fantastic. They're always competitive. And yeah, I mean, Chase definitely was good when they had their struggles, and they were really bad for a while. He really did keep Hendrick at least some level of competitive, but now that they have recovered, they don't really have a need for that. So I do think he'll be the one that goes somewhere else at some point. I don't know when his current contract is up, but I don't see these two staying on the same team. I think there's a level of just disrespect between the two teammates that I don't think is repairable. And I don't think it's ever going to be repaired, to be completely honest. I just don't think it's going to happen, because this is not something that started, by the way, just at Hendrick Motorsports. This goes all the way back. You can go to a number of races throughout both of these guys' careers where it's just two different racing styles. Kyle does tend to race more elbows out, and he is not afraid to make contact. Chase typically doesn't make a ton of contact with people. He's made contact in retaliation to things, but he typically doesn't run into someone's car, at least, especially not egregiously. A lot of, the rubbing, you'll get a little of that, but, I mean, not to the degree that Larson has. And it's just a different style of racing. Larson comes from the dirt world, where it's a lot of slide jobs, fitting it into a tight spot, and that kind of thing. And the late model world, you don't have as much of that. You can really work a guy over and kind of work your way past him. So it's two different racing styles, and I don't think they work well. They certainly don't mesh, because they have gotten into a number of these. And like I said, I don't think long term it's going to work. I think you may see the next contract come around, and I think Chase is next, because Bowman got an extension, Byron got an extension, Larson has an extension. I don't think Elliott does. I think his ends after 2024 or 2025. So I personally would not be shocked if Chase is on a different team after his current contract is up, because I do not believe he is I don't think he is content with the current position at Hendrick Motorsports of, you're kind of your guy number 3, and I don't believe that is something he's going to do well for. Not a lot of people who have won championships do. Look at Kyle Busch. Last year he had the third best pit crew behind Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell, and he did not like that, and he left. I think part of that is he did not want to continue that. And so, when you have the third best crew, you're like, I ain't going to be number 2 or number 3 at one team. I'll be number 1 at a different team if that's the case. And so I wouldn't be shocked if that's what happens. And I don't know what it'll look like. There's, with the charter system, there's not a lot of options or opportunities, but you got to realize there's some guys that could be, potentially retiring in the next few years, or darn close to it. And I think that there's going to be some options available. So could be a very interesting silly season coming up here in a few years, because obviously he's always been with Hendrick, literally all the way through the development process. But like they said, I think it was Watkins' gun last year. There is no fixing it, and I truly believe that's the case, because most of the time, if there's some slight pit road contract, people don't get mad. But I think at this point that frustration has boiled over far more than just a simple contact on pit road. This goes much deeper. And like I said, you can count it a number of times where there's just a disregard between the 5 and the 9, and I don't think you can fix it. So I don't think the 5's going anywhere, because like I said, with the Indy 500 and all the stuff they've done together, the wins, especially the combination with Cliff, I just don't think that's going to go anywhere. So where would the 9 go, or where would Chase go? I have no idea what teams would even have something open. I think Chase going to Toyota would be interesting to see what NASCAR fans do, because that'd be wild. You're talking Toyota. All the Chase fans hate Toyota, but what happens if he goes around with one? Then what? Ford, Stewart Haas is not great. There's no extra charters at RFK unless Brad retires. So, yeah, it could be a very, very interesting offseason here coming up next year or the year after, because there's definitely I don't think this is something that's going to smooth over quickly. This is going to fester for a while, because it's been festering, and I don't think it's changing. So, I think there's a certain amount of it of just the best way to put it is there's a certain amount of it is just like, you kind of get sick of your coworkers and you just quit and go find a new job. And I think we could very easily see something similar, with this level of competitive nature. And, I watched today's race from the stands, And even when Chase had led those 47 laps, he was not fast. That car was out front, but somebody was always right behind him. Kyle Larson, when he got the lead, he was half a track ahead of everybody. He was half a lap ahead in clean air. So these cars are not the same. Just because he executed better than Kyle and ended up staying up front for that specific stage, but Kyle Larson rallied all the way from the back to the front. Chase's car would never have done that. Of course, there's two groups of thought. There's one of, Cliff Daniels used strategy to do it. Yes, he did. Cliff Daniels is fantastic with strategy. Alan Gustafson is not. But then there's the other half, which are the uninformed people who are just, Kyle Larson's a better race car driver. That's the whole difference. Come on, let's be realistic here. They're both great drivers, but the idea that when they go to Watkins Glen and the 5 is fast and the 9 is garbage, it's because the one's a better driver. I think we all know there's a certain way that track has been run, and the guy that's been fastest their last 3 years and got shoved out of the way last year to get beat, there's something wrong with the car. It's not fast enough. So, I'm not sure what it'll look like. I'm very curious to see what the off season looks like for the 9 team, and then what the silly season looks like following that. Because if they make no changes and Allen comes back next year and they're just as non-competitive and he only leads 60 to 70 laps, maybe he snags a win, but that's not going to be satisfying enough. I don't think that's, being a 8th to 12th place car is not going to be enough. I don't think that's something that he's going to settle for. So it could be very interesting. I think I'm trying to think because I think Penske's pretty well set. 2311's pretty well set. Colleague could be intriguing. JGR could be another one that's potentially intriguing. And 2311 could be a very interesting one if they wanted a third charter. I don't know what Denny would do if he would try to poach or not. So could be interesting. I'm definitely intrigued to look forward. But let me know your thoughts on the pit road incident. Like I said, my thoughts were pretty simple. It was kind of a racing deal, but it's also definitely something that's been boiling up for a while, and we'll see what that looks like. Obviously, I understand the frustration entirely because, like I said, he should have beat Tyler. He was in the position to beat Tyler Reddick out if Kyle doesn't, slam him right in the middle of the door, and then because of that of course causes both of them to lift, and then Tyler Reddick wins the race. And I'm sure getting Hendrick's 300th win was definitely on the mind, because I remember that from getting Hendrick's 200th win. The drivers were trying so hard to win it, and they kept almost wrecking each other to get it. And so, I don't know. We'll see if that continues. I'm sure they'll get number 300 by the end of the year here. It may even happen next week. But definitely a situation to keep an eye on. So, when in 2 years they say that Elliott's not returning to Hendrick Motorsports, come back to this video and just let me know that I called it. So, anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the race today, and we'll see you tomorrow on our next Diecast review.